Hi, everybody. Say hi, Adeline. Hi. Okay, happy Thanksgiving. So what we're gonna do today is show you just how easy it is to make dressing or stuffing, however you call it, okay? So Miss Adeline's gonna help here too. So what I did first, I did some pre-work here, is I just took a loaf of bread, a loaf of just regular French bread. I got mine for $1. It's nice and cheap. And I set it out, or first I cut it up. Now, some people will say you should rip it up because it helps get all the stuff in the nooks and crannies, but I cut mine up. And as you can see, I seasoned it with parsley, oregano, basil, and thyme, and olive oil. And I let it sit out overnight, let it dry up. Okay, so that's the first step that I did. Yeah, what is it? It's bread. So that's the first thing I did. This is actually about 1.5 loaves, depending about how many people you're gonna have with you. You know, maybe you can just do a loaf, maybe you need 2 loaves, but this step's really easy. Just get bread dried out, okay? So that's step 1. Then what we're gonna do is we're going to chop up some celery and some onions, okay? So, do you wanna count these? 4 stalks of celery and 2 onions, okay? So we're gonna get those chopped up because then we're gonna combine that with some garlic and some onions, cook that down, but I'll show you that all next, okay? All right, here we go. All right. Here, you can put this in the pan. Yeah. She's a good helper for now. Yeah, you got her. Got a little more left. And don't worry about chopping any of this too fine. It can be a real rough chop because in the end it's gonna get cooked down really well, and people I think kind of like a little bit of that crunch in their dressing to kind of add a little dimension to their dressing, which brings up the next point. I refuse to eat dressing. I hate it. I hate it. But, you know, I'm taking one for the team. I make it every year for the family because that's love. But no, I will not eat it. You can't make me. So there we go. All right, so I'm just gonna rough chop this. Adeline's gonna help put it in the pan, and we're just gonna keep plugging along. Yeah. Oh no. A couple of things to note while you're getting this stuff chopped up. My oven just went off. I've got it preheated at 425, so just try to do that. I think Adeline might be learning the hard lesson about onions and making your eyes water, because she started to say, oh no, a few times. So we may have to keep an eye on this situation here. But also you may note on the stove back there, if you can peek it behind Adeline's head, there's a big stainless steel pot back there. That is Britton making apple pie, and I do not mean the dessert. So that's going down here too. And if you're someone other than Adeline and myself, well, Adeline isn't going to be having any anyway, obviously, but for someone like myself who's allergic to apples, I won't be having that either. So this is just a session about all the things I'm not going to eat, which, fun times. Just taking one for the team here. But anyway, we're going to keep that onion back in the pan, as you can hear from Adeline. And we're going to keep chopping up this onion, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, so here's an update. We did discover that onions hurt your eyes, so we had a little bit of a break in our service here, but we're back. Now, the thing that makes Thanksgiving so good is butter. So, whole stick of it goes in there, Adeline. Good job. So we're gonna add a whole stick of butter. We're gonna add some pepper, lots of pepper. We're gonna add some salt. I do pink Himalayan salt. You can do whatever kind you want. And then, Adeline, you can grab this mixture Okay, now let's pour some in. There you go. A good healthy dose of this mix. This is my oregano, basil, thyme, and parsley mix to season it up. You can also add sage and rosemary to really do the fall theme. I'm not a huge sage and rosemary person. I'm obviously not eating this dressing, but sometimes it can be a lot of overkill. Sometimes people say that it's just a make or break of the dish. But we're gonna take this pan and we're going to cook this on the stove about 5 minutes only, just enough to kind of soften it all up. And then we'll move on to the next step. Say bye. Almost forgot the garlic. Don't forget the garlic. 2 cloves or so, or a good teaspoon of the minced garlic if you're like us. Say don't forget. Say don't forget. Okay, so here it's about 5 minutes. We got this sauteed up. The onions are a little softer than the celery, but that's exactly what we want. Okay, so now the next step that Adeline's gonna really help at is we're gonna put all the bread in a big bowl. Okay? Put it all in there. Let's get it in. Keep going. Why? Put it in here. Are your hands dirty now? Okay, Mama will do it then. Why? Don't you want to help? Okay, I lost some help, but we'll roll with it. Okay, so I'm not quite using a loaf and a half. I think this is plenty. And then we're just going to pour the onions and celery and garlic mixture right over the top. Okay, this is the biggest bowl I have, so that might be an issue. Okay, so we're gonna cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, then, yeah, this is gonna be a very delicate stir, so don't make the same mistake that I just did. But what we're gonna do here is I've got some chicken broth. I did the reduced sodium. We're gonna do 2.5 cups that we're gonna start with of this chicken broth. But we're gonna do about half of that for now. And then we're going to actually put our 2 eggs right in the chicken broth, whisk those up, and then add the rest of the chicken broth, because then you can really be sure that all the eggs get incorporated in the chicken broth and that you don't end up having cooked eggs throughout your dressing. You know, like chunks of cooked eggs. This isn't a breakfast meal. We don't want chunks of cooked eggs. Okay? So, which one did I have open? Goodness, I'm losing it. All right, so now we're gonna add the rest of this chicken broth to make it the 2.5 cups to start. Now I say that because if we're noticing that the bread maybe is just a little bit too dry, then we're just gonna add more chicken broth. If we end up needing to add a lot more chicken broth, then we'll need to think about updating the seasoning too and adding more seasoning, because we just don't want it to be bland. Okay, so as you can see, I'm being very delicate with this for 2 reasons. One is that this bowl is too small for its own good. But 2 is we don't want to mush up this bread. We want the bread chunks to stay intact. Okay, so now we're gonna pour the broth mixture and the egg mixture right over the top. And we're just gonna do some more mixing. And now it should start to be more of a soft consistency, like dressing. So what do you guys call it? Dressing or stuffing? I am used to hearing it both ways. My grandma Tyson, Grandma Laura, would always call it dressing. My grandma Schmitz, Grandma Dolores, would always call it stuffing. Britain thinks we just use stovetop stuffing. And if you're of that mindset too, I'm here to say, don't do it, because look how easy this is. This is super easy. We're done with all the steps, okay? This was it. This is literally it. Now, some people put sausage in their dressing. Some people say that sausage is the difference between stuffing and dressing. I guess I don't really care either way. I think I just prefer calling it dressing. You'll notice I did add a little bit of chicken broth, not too much. I don't really care what I call it. I don't think anyone else really does either. I really don't care because I'm just not gonna eat it, so. All right, so now I've got a greased up 9x13, and I'm just going to get this all in here. Ooh, it smells really good. It smells really flavorful. And it's a perfect fit to fit in this 9x13. Make sure you scoop up all the seasoning out of here. Okay. There's only one thing left to do, and that's to cover this up. We're gonna bake this for 25 to 35 minutes in a 425-degree oven once it's covered up with tinfoil. And then after that 25 to 35 minutes, we're gonna take the tinfoil off and we're gonna cook it for another 10 to 15 minutes. Now, if you are like my grandpa, or I call him Papa, he loves the burnt, crispy ends of the dressing. If you're like that, put it on broil for a couple minutes, but stand next to your oven and make sure you're watching it. Okay, so I'm gonna get this covered in tinfoil and get it in the oven. Forgot to mention, along with a couple other things I guess I forgot to mention, do one final little seasoning at the end here before you get it covered up with just good old salt and pepper, just to make sure that we've got good flavor throughout. Covered up, put it in the oven. Alrighty, time's up. Look at this goodness here. If you're into dressing, you know, if this is your thing, it probably looks pretty tasty. The best thing about this is, as you can tell from the window outside there, it's darko. So that means I pre-made this for tomorrow's meal. That's the best part. Now I don't have to worry about making this tomorrow, and I can focus on other things. Thanks for watching.